Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode, and I'm absolutely thrilled today to have Marilyn Jenkins. Marilyn, first of all, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And one of the reasons I'm so excited is because Marilyn is as passionate as I am about why every business, and even more specifically, every law firm needs a podcast. So we're definitely going to get to that. But Marilyn, before we do, I wondered if you could share with our audience a little bit about your professional background.
Absolutely. I've been in digital marketing for a long time. Started like a lot of people helping friends with websites and then growing into doing digital marketing ads and SEO and that kind of thing. And through referrals, I've got to work with some attorneys, which is really great. And I've been working with attorneys since about 2018. And one of the things that come across working with attorneys and other businesses is some are not quite at the point of being ready to pay for outside marketing, outsource their marketing. So I put together a book that explains step by step everything, pardon me, everything you need to do for your Google business profile and set that up as an example as well for attorneys that want to do books. It's an ebook, a PDF download, and it also is an audio book and that sort of thing. So what I'm doing for myself, I'm also doing for attorneys and helping them grow their firms by reaching their local market.
So my favorite stories in trying to, and I think everyone on this podcast knows I'm a recovering trial lawyer and probably a recovering attorney, but I've tried to market to other law firms and I've actually got the argument they really need to be billing hours, not wasting their time talking to you. Why is that so inane in 2024?
It's almost like there's certain industries that just don't want to move forward when it comes to digital marketing, and your market is online. It's just, it can't be denied. Let me look at anything, even look at politics. They're going online to find the voters. You have to be online. You have to deal with your digital presence in order to get these new customers.
So you mentioned you have been in the digital space for quite some time, and I was really intrigued to see that you were actually in the digital book publishing space, or at least book selling space. Could you tell us a little bit about that part of your journey?
Yeah, so in the late 90s, yes, I'm dating myself. In the late 90s, I had the idea of being able to read your newspaper on your phone or on a tablet, which was way new. We had the Palm Pilot and that sort of thing back then. Then, of course, newspapers became electronic. So I moved into books and we were working with CyberRead was the company. We were publishing books. We actually worked with Random House and some of the larger publishing houses when they first moved into ebooks. And I would help authors publish their books in electronic and in print. And it was really exciting to work in publishing and being on the cutting edge of ebooks and helping people. We would supply bookstores across the globe. And that was my team and I built one of the first persistent bookshelves. So from one purchase to another, it's everyday thing now with your Kindle. You can go into your Amazon and go to your Kindle or your Barnes and Noble and you can download any book you bought. Back then it was new. So it was a lot of technology growth as well as publishing growth and learning more about the authors and what they're putting into their books.
Could you tell us about how you evolved into podcasting? Was it a natural extension of what you had done previously in your career? Was it something new and different? What brought you to our world?
One of my coaches is a podcaster, and he suggested doing podcast guesting to kind of get the message out about what we're doing. Ads, it's different. You want to get in front of the audience that they're listening to. And so this seemed to be a really good way of getting out there, telling about the book and trying to educate people on their Google business profile. So I've been podcast guesting for a long time. And a few months ago, it was just people kept bringing up, you should do your own, you should do your own. So in June, July, I started working on a podcast and we officially launched the end of July. And our ratings are going pretty well and the downloads are growing. So that's exciting. We've officially published, as of tomorrow, 6 episodes, and we have lined up probably another 30. So it's certainly something that's growing more than I expected. And it's getting an audience really quickly, which is exactly what you want.
That's fabulous. Let's turn now to law firms. You touched on one reason we haven't seen many law firms embrace podcasting as perhaps you and I might like or think is appropriate. And that's just that lawyers are inherently conservative and our profession is inherently conservative. Can I flip that to ask you, when you sit down with a prospective client, what do you tell them the advantages of having a podcast or the reasons they should have a podcast?
It's to build authority. So you're sitting up behind your desk, you've got all those big books behind you, and you know all the stuff that people know, but the normal person doesn't feel like an attorney is really approachable. So what you're doing is you're showing people with your podcast, with lead magnets on your website, all of these different things that you are a trusted resource, that you are an authority, and you're telling them exactly how you can help them. And it makes complete sense to get it out there and be approachable. People learn your voice. They learn how you are and it just makes sense to be approachable. And I know that seems silly and simple, but you want a thought leader whenever I'm going to get someone, when I need help with something, whether it's a divorce or an accident or whatever, I want to know that I feel like I know the attorney before I walk in the door.
So I heard 3 things in there. I heard, number 1, you started with thought leadership, and certainly you wanna demonstrate your expertise in a particular area. Then you heard I heard approachability abilityness, if that's a word, and that's the audio part. And I try to explain to people there's something about the audio format that is more powerful, certainly than the written word, and perhaps even more powerful than video. And it brings a level of trust that you don't get in those other formats. And I've read some scientific studies that back that up, but I can't tell you the number of times I've been at a conference and someone said, I recognize your voice. I recognize your voice. And I'm a prodigious consumer of podcasts, and the ones I have on weekly or sometimes daily rotation, I feel like I'm sitting across the table having a cup of coffee with a friend listening to them talk. And
Mhm.
I can't frankly think of a more powerful way to communicate than that. And the third thing I heard you say was that the lawyer is providing the information on how it can solve the client's problem. So it's actually marketing your
It is.
skills to your target market. Does this approach work for literally the solo practitioner up to the white shoe New York worldwide firm?
Absolutely, absolutely. And also think about it whenever you're looking at people think about the expense. Podcasting is not that expensive. It is also a marketing expense. So there is no limit to the amount of money you spend on marketing. So you can take it off your taxes. So there's a lot of benefits to doing it. So, I mean, just makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I mean, you definitely want to get your voice out there. You don't have to do video. And I know a lot of attorneys don't want to have certain opinions or they don't want to be on camera because they're camera shy or whatever. You don't have to publish the video. It can be just audio. And the thing is just conversation. We don't need dissertations. No one's going to listen to a TED talk once a week from the same person, but listening to conversation, that's exactly what I do on mine. I love bringing in people that are relatable to the industry, whether it's an actual attorney or a service provider or anything like that. It's a conversation that's fun to listen to.
Marilyn, do you ever either have the discussion or make the suggestion along the lines of asking a lawyer, do you do a client alert? And the answer is typically yes. They say,
Mhm.
why don't you read that as a podcast? You ever have that conversation? You're already doing it. Why not just move to audio?
Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, I mean, updates. When we talk about what to put on your Google business profile and your blog, that's the thing is the more you put out there, the more information you're giving Google and your potential new clients. So make a podcast out of it. Read those things. It's great information.
So when I sit down with a client or usually a potential client, and I explain to them the podcast service that I have available, I tell them the podcast is actually about 40% of it. The other part is the social media marketing assets that I
Mhm.
create. I create videograms at 60 seconds or less for Twitter, Facebook Reels, and YouTube Shorts, and one at 2 minutes or less for LinkedIn. And I explain those are evergreen and you
Mhm.
can use those on any of those platforms I just named. You can also use them on Instagram, Twitter if you're so inclined, excuse me, TikTok if you're so inclined. But they're generally evergreen because the topic is some legal subject that someone's always going to want information on. And so that
Mhm.
you develop sort of a catalog of social media sharing assets. Is that a part of your offering? And is that a part of the discussion you have with your clients?
Yes, and actually, thanks to you, we've solidified a little bit more about the shorts. So we've always done, you'll get sample social media posts for different platforms, right? With the link to your particular episode. However, after having our initial conversation, my team creates shorts for me from my podcasts, guesting, and the podcasts that I create. And so now we're doing that for all of our clients. You'll get at least 3, sometimes 7 to 9 shorts to use on your social media. So, and access to the original video if you want to build your YouTube channel. So it's a win for everyone. You know, you get more content, I get more exposure, you get more exposure. It makes a lot of sense.
So you mentioned one thing in there I'd like to pick up on, which I think I heard you say you actually write out some social media shares for Twitter, perhaps Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I have found that's absolutely necessary to do because lawyers are not going to do that. But even if they have the law firm has a CMO or other marketing type that they don't have any other resources. So the more information assets you can provide to them, the more they're going to use those. Has that been your experience, or do you find law
Absolutely.
firms want to do that as well?
No, absolutely. I find that it's when you want someone to leave you a review, they want you to know what they want to know what to say. So instead of making it a question and saying, please share this with your network, oh, here, we're going to give it to you. Copy and paste this and put it on the platform.
So, what are some of the other strategies you help law firms with beyond podcasts? You mentioned several times about Google. How do you help lawyers improve their Google ranking?
SEO has been this big cloud of, gosh, I don't know what all is involved in that. With Google My Business, which is what most of us recognize from a place to store your reviews, it's no new iteration, new being 2 years, is Google Business Profile. This is a free listing, free, can I say free? It's a free service from Google so that you can tell Google all of the things you do. You can do posts, you can do audios, you can do videos, it's almost like your own blog, right? And everything you give Google tells them which searches and more searches that you can be found in. So that's the big thing about your Google Business Profile. We coach on that. We actually, like I said, I wrote the book on how to do it if you don't want someone outsourcing to do it for you, or we can do it for you.
The strategies you have articulated, I think, work not simply with law firms, but with any business. And as I live in a rural part of West Texas, so part of my mission is to try to communicate to local businesses in a small town of 20,000 people. This can be a powerful social media marketing tool for you. Do you find any validity in that approach?
Absolutely. And from doing the get podcast guesting, my book has been sold to many different industries. The book isn't specifically outlined to law firms. That's what I market it to. But any business that's a local business with a Google Business Profile can be found. So let's think about when you're a consumer, you want to find something, you're walking down the street. Oh, I wonder if that pet store is open today. You search for it, right? You pull out your phone, you search on Google. The pretty part in the middle of the screen are maps. Everybody listed in the maps is your Google Business Profile. And if you've never told Google what you're doing, or you don't update it and be engaged with it, which helps them give a better user experience, you won't be in the map pack, but you want to be. So that's what your Google Business Profile is. You will see at 80%, they say between 50 and 80% of the people that search click on the maps. That number comes from Google.
I think you've given me my top of the hour assignment. Do you market locally? Do you market domestically or nationally rather? What's your sort of overall audience or customer base?
I market nationwide. So I don't really focus on locally. I offer services to attorneys in the US.
Could I ask you about your podcast and guesting experience? How has that been?
It's been really interesting. I've been focusing a lot on early on, it's on the marketing side of it and digital marketing to get the book out to that. And then finally, slowly being able to get on more lawyer oriented podcasts to get the information out there. It's been really good. I mean, the contacts you make, the network you're building, it's interesting. I met some fabulous people and you get referrals. It is a way of building your business. It's a I definitely recommend it. If you're not going to do your own podcast, at least make a point of podcast guesting. It's a way to get your message out there and get known.
That's a great point. And I don't think perhaps we talk about that enough. And maybe your experience would be instructive in terms of dipping your toe in the lake.
Mhm.
Do some guests, put yourself out there. Certainly prepare, but see what the experience is like. Would you suggest a lawyer or a businessman try that?
Absolutely. I signed up for Podmatch, which helped really well for me as far as giving me the opportunity or the place to get connected. But there's other options, and I'm sure your network works great for connecting people. But yeah, get out there and start do some guest appearances. It's not overly stressful. It's two people having a conversation. Yeah, other people may listen to it later, and we hope they do. But you don't have to overthink it. And I think that's what some people do.
Let's just go ahead and shout out to Podmatch and Alex for putting together a fabulous platform because that's how we met
Nice.
on Podmatch. And I saw Alex at a conference last week and told he and his wife Alicia, who jointly run that business, and I'm going to start signing up for guesting now. I'm so
Yeah.
impressed by the other part of it. Is there? I often am asked, "How do you start a podcast?" And my answer is always the same: you get off your duff and start it. In terms of law firms, is it that simple, or are there some first steps that law firms should take that you would advise them on, whether you're working with them or they're trying to do it on their own?
I think you have to realize that it's not that complicated. You don't have to have the big fancy microphone. You don't have to have the big fancy headphones and a fancy camera. You've got a camera in your computer. That's sufficient to start with. You've got Zoom and have a good set of headphones with a nice microphone. It doesn't have to be that much. I use Buzzsprout to distribute mine everywhere. They also have co-host AI. I don't know if you've played with that. It will actually listen to your entire podcast and give you the summary, your chapters and all of that. Then you go in and you rewrite it, obviously add the links to it, that sort of thing, and then publish it or schedule it. And it's less than $20 a month. I use Squadcast to do it. You use Restream. I mean, all in, you're less than what? Less than $100 a month, less than $50 a month.
Less
And
than
you get
50.
less than 50 and you get 3 hours of time. Most of my podcasts are 25 to 30 minutes, so that's easily 6 podcasts a month. I do once a week. So if you keep thinking, if you keep looking at these, the podcast setup on Amazon or whatever, and you're going, oh my God, all of that stuff, I got it. No, you don't. No, you don't.
I love it. Marilyn, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time for this episode, but before we leave, I wanted to ask you if our listeners wanted to connect with you or get any more information on you, your company, or your services, what might be the best place or places for them to go?
The best place to find me is at lawmarketingzone.com. And if you're interested in having a look at my book, it's at maximizeyourgbp.com. And then I'm always on LinkedIn.
Marilyn, I wanted to thank you again for coming on my podcast. I was able to come on your podcast, and it's been great fun talking with you. And I hope we can continue this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having